Welcome to the Good White Folks Podcast, your trusted source for counter-racism news and analysis. Powered by Planetary chess and cutting-edge AI, we deliver sharp insights into the state of white supremacy to keep you informed and empowered.
All right, get ready, because we're going deep on this one, folks. This deep dive is going to tackle a topic that's been debated for centuries: the origins and development of Christianity.
Yeah.
We've got some really thought-provoking sources for this one. Academic papers, historical analyses, you name it.
Yeah.
And it looks like the story of how Christianity came to be might be a lot more complicated than we thought.
You know, it's interesting because it seems like controversy is just baked right into the foundation of Christianity.
Right.
The traditional narrative, the one we often hear, paints this picture of an early church that was unified and harmonious.
Right.
But the reality is, it was a lot more turbulent than that.
Wow. So let's unpack that then. One of the research papers we're looking at is called The Fabrication of Jesus and the Strategic Formation of Christianity as an Instrument for European Hegemony and the Perpetuation of White Supremacy.
Right.
And it argues that the formation of the church itself was full of disputes and power struggles. So like controversies right from the start.
Yeah, and this paper suggests that the formation of the church wasn't just about spiritual matters.
Yeah,
It was really deeply connected to what was going on politically and socially in the Roman Empire. And to really understand how Christianity evolved, you have to understand those dynamics.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if there was so much controversy going on, who were the main players and what were they disagreeing about?
Well, one of the biggest controversies revolved around this guy named Arius, who was a presbyter from Libya.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
Arius basically challenged what was becoming the accepted Christian belief at the time by questioning whether Jesus was really divine. And this whole thing became known as the Arian controversy, and it really shook the early church to its core.
So wait, Arius was saying that Jesus wasn't divine?
Yeah, basically.
That's a huge deal. I mean, that seems like the foundation of the whole religion.
Exactly. Arius was arguing that Jesus was created by God and subordinate to him. And that directly contradicts the doctrine of the Trinity, which says that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are all equal and eternal.
Yeah, huge difference of opinion there. So what happened to this Arius guy? Did they just tell him to be quiet?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. In 325 AD, Emperor Constantine called this big council the Council of Nicaea,
Oh, wow.
specifically to deal with this controversy.
Oh.
And in the end, the council decided that Arius's views were heresy,
Right.
but that's not where the story ends.
Oh, there's more.
Shortly after the council, Arius died.
Oh, no.
Under some pretty suspicious circumstances.
Okay, now we've got a mystery on our hands. What are the theories about how he died? Was there foul play involved?
Well, the details surrounding Arius's death are kind of murky.
Right.
Some historians think he might have been poisoned to keep him quiet,
Wow.
but there's no solid proof of that. But here's what makes it even more intriguing.
What's that?
Emperor Constantine issued this edict, this official order, to destroy all of Arius's writings.
Really?
He even threatened anyone who kept them with death.
That's some serious censorship. It makes you wonder if Arius was getting too close to something those in power didn't want people to know.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there was a big effort to suppress Arius's ideas,
Right.
to control how the story of Christianity was told.
So let's connect the dots here.
Yeah.
If Arius was questioning whether Jesus was divine, and they went to such lengths to silence him, could it be that the people in power were more interested in keeping their authority than in finding the truth?
That's a great question, and it's something worth thinking about. This research paper suggests that the church was very deliberate about establishing a unified doctrine,
Okay.
and silencing people like Arius who disagreed might have been part of that.
Wow, so the implications go even deeper than just silencing one guy.
Right, they do.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Yeah.
What else does this research paper tell us?
Well, it connects this idea of controlling the narrative to bigger themes of power, specifically European dominance and maintaining white supremacy.
Good.
It argues that the story of Jesus as we know it was shaped and spread to support those agendas.
Hold on. Are we saying that Jesus himself might have been made up or manipulated to benefit the powerful?
That's a big claim, and one that we need to look at very carefully.
Right.
But this research paper makes a strong argument that the story of Jesus as we know it might not be the whole story.
All right. Now, I'm really intrigued. It feels like we're uncovering some hidden history here. Where do we go next on this exploration?
So, this research paper also takes us in a really interesting direction.
Okay, lay it on me.
It challenges that traditional Eurocentric view of history.
Okay. I'm listening. What's next on our journey down this rabbit hole?
We're going to look at the work of George G.M. James.
Okay.
He was an African-American scholar who wrote this groundbreaking book called Stolen Legacy back in 1954.
Stolen Legacy, huh? The title alone sounds like some serious historical revisionism.
Yeah.
So what's the main argument of the book?
Well, James argues that a lot of what we think of as Greek philosophy actually came from ancient Egypt. Really?
Specifically from the Egyptian mystery system.
Wow. Okay.
He says that famous Greek philosophers like Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle, they all got a lot of their ideas from Egyptian thought. But Eurocentric historians have pretty much ignored or downplayed that intellectual debt.
That's fascinating. So if we're rethinking the origins of Western philosophy, does that mean we need to rethink the origins of Christianity too?
That's a key question.
Yeah.
If we accept James's premise that Greek philosophy has roots in African thought, then it makes sense that those African influences could have also made their way into early Christian theology.
Wow, that's a really interesting idea. It really challenges that traditional view that Christianity is mainly a product of Greco-Roman culture.
Exactly. James's work highlights how important it is to decolonize our understanding of history.
Right.
And to recognize the huge contributions that non-European cultures have made to the development of Western thought.
Yeah.
And that includes religious thought. This is all starting to connect in really interesting ways.
Yeah.
We started by looking at the controversies in the early church.
Right.
Then we talked about how they controlled the narrative by destroying Arius' writings and with the printing press. And now we're questioning the very origins of the philosophical ideas that shaped Christianity. So like we're peeling back layers of assumptions and uncovering a story that's much more complex and nuanced.
You got it. That's the beauty of a deep dive, you know? It lets us look at these sources from different angles and connect the dots in a way that reveals a more complete understanding of the past, even if it's a more challenging one.
I like that. So let's keep digging. What other avenues does this research paper explore?
Well, it goes into some really disturbing ways that Christianity has been used to justify racial hierarchies and white supremacy.
Yeah, I was wondering when we'd get to that. It's a tough conversation to have.
It is.
But it's necessary. So what specifically are we talking about?
The paper discusses the curse of Ham.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
It's a biblical narrative that has been twisted throughout history to justify enslaving and oppressing African people.
Wait, are you saying they used a story from the Bible to justify enslaving people? How is that even possible? The Bible's supposed to be about love and compassion.
That's the sneaky thing about manipulation. The story of Noah cursing his son Ham and Ham's descendants has been interpreted by some to mean that African people are descended from Ham and therefore destined to be servants.
That's a total misrepresentation of the text. It's like they're cherry-picking a passage and twisting it to fit their agenda.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And it's a tactic that's been used over and over again to justify all kinds of terrible things, including the transatlantic slave trade.
It's disturbing how a text that's supposed to inspire faith and morality can be twisted to serve such horrible purposes.
It is, and it doesn't stop there. The paper also talks about the doctrine of discovery.
The doctrine of discovery? That sounds ominous. What is that all about?
It was a series of papal bulls issued in the 15th century that basically gave European nations a religious justification to claim land that was inhabited by non-Christians.
So you're saying that the church basically gave European powers a free pass to colonize and exploit other parts of the world?
That's essentially what happened.
Wow.
These papal bulls declared that any land not ruled by Christians was terra nullius, which means nobody's land. So they were free to take it.
This is mind-blowing. It's like a blueprint for colonialism disguised as religious doctrine. It's hard to believe they use these ideas to justify such horrific actions.
It's a painful reminder of how religion has been used throughout history to legitimize power and oppression. It makes you question the real motives behind the spread of Christianity.
So we've talked about the curse of Ham and the doctrine of discovery,
Right.
both of which were used to justify the subjugation of non-European people.
Yes.
But what about the actual efforts to convert those people to Christianity? Where does that fit into all of this?
Well, that brings us to missionary movements, which played a huge role in spreading Christianity during the colonial era.
Right.
While they're often presented as these benevolent efforts to bring salvation to the heathens, missionary work often went hand in hand with forcing European culture and values onto people.
So it wasn't just about converting people to a new faith, but also about erasing their existing cultures and replacing them with something considered superior.
Sadly, that's what often happened. Indigenous languages,
Right.
spiritual practices, and ways of life were suppressed or even demonized as part of the missionary effort.
It's like a double whammy. First, you justify taking their land and resources, and then you try to erase their very identities.
It's a tragic chapter in human history, and one that still has consequences today.
Yeah.
The psychological and social impacts of colonialism and forced cultural assimilation are still felt in many parts of the world.
This conversation is about so much more than just the history of Christianity.
Right.
It's about power dominance and the ways those forces have shaped our world and continue to influence us.
Absolutely, and it's a conversation we need to have if we want to understand the complexities of the world we live in and work towards a more just and equitable future.
This deep dive is getting more unsettling, but it's also so enlightening. I'm curious to see what other insights we'll find as we keep exploring. What else do we need to unpack from this research paper?
You know, we could switch gears a little bit and look at something else that tells us a lot about the culture where Christianity developed.
Okay, I'm up for a change. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
This research paper's got so much to unpack, it's like peeling an onion.
It looks at how common pederasty was in ancient Greece and Rome, and how those practices might have influenced early Christian communities.
Whoa, okay, that's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, it is.
But I guess it's important to understand the historical context, even if it's uncomfortable. What does the research paper say about it?
Well, it points out that these pederastic relationships, sexual relationships between adult men and younger males, were not only common in those societies, but they were actually considered socially acceptable.
That's definitely not something we'd consider okay today. But how did those practices influence Christianity?
That's a complicated question. The paper suggests that as the early church was developing in this culture, they had to deal with these norms. Some scholars argue that this tension led to changes in doctrine and church leadership that reflected the patriarchal values of the time, like a growing emphasis on male authority and pushing women to the side.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like the church was trying to adapt to its surroundings, even if it meant compromising some of its own ideals.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that religious institutions aren't stuck in time. They're constantly changing and being shaped by the culture and society around them.
And didn't the paper also mention how the idea of the Trinity shifted from maybe a more inclusive concept to the exclusively male Trinity we see today?
Yes, that's a really important point. The switch to a purely masculine Trinity.
With God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Exactly. It kind of mirrors this broader trend of misogyny and suppressing the feminine divine that was going on at the time.
So are we saying that these cultural practices and ideas about gender actually influenced early Christian doctrines?
It's definitely something to think about. The research paper doesn't claim to have all the answers.
I get that.
But it does raise some thought-provoking questions about how these historical forces might have shaped the religion as we know it.
And these practices have left behind a pretty dark legacy, haven't they? The paper also points out that pederasty is still a problem among some clergymen, which just adds another layer to this whole issue.
It's a stark reminder that even in institutions that claim moral authority, human failings and the shadows of history can still be there. We have to acknowledge these issues and deal with them, not just sweep them under the rug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about pederasty and misogyny, both heavy topics. Is there anything else in this research paper that we need to look at?
Yeah, there's one last example that really shows how Christianity has been misused for evil purposes.
Okay, I'm bracing myself. What is it?
The Ku Klux Klan.
The KKK. Just the name makes me shudder. What does the research paper say about them?
It points out that the KKK, even though they claim to be a Christian organization, used the burning cross as a symbol of racial terror and white supremacy.
It's just sickening to think that they would twist a symbol of faith into something so hateful. How could they even call themselves Christians?
It's a total perversion of religion. They've taken the idea of believing in something and twisted it to an extreme, using it to justify violence and oppression against anyone they think is unworthy or different.
It's the ultimate hypocrisy, hiding behind religion to spread hate and fear. It's another example of how easily faith can be manipulated and distorted to serve harmful agendas.
It's a serious warning against blindly following something and the dangers of religious extremism. We need to be critical thinkers, questioning what we're told and challenging anyone who uses religion to justify hurting others.
Okay, we've covered a lot in this deep dive controversies in the early church. Controlling the narrative, the influence of ancient cultures, justifying slavery and colonialism, and even the dark side of religious extremism. It's been a lot to take in. What are some key takeaways from all of this?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that religion, just like any other human institution,
Yeah.
is not immune to power politics and cultural bias.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of that context when we study history, interpret religious texts, and even when we engage in our own faith practices.
I totally agree. This deep dive has made me think critically about what I've been taught and consider different perspectives. It's been uncomfortable at times, but so valuable.
That's what it's all about, questioning what you think you know and trying to understand the past in a more complete and accurate way.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we take what we've learned and actually apply it to our lives?
That's the big question, isn't it? Now that we know about this complicated and often troubling history of Christianity, how do we understand this religion and its place in the world today?
That's a question I'm going to be thinking about for a long time to come. And I hope everyone listening will do the same. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive. It's been truly eye-opening.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure. Just remember, critical thinking is essential, especially when we're dealing with topics as complex and influential as religion.
Thank you for tuning in to the Good White Folks podcast. Be sure to visit us at planetarychess.org to explore more content and subscribe to our monthly newsletter. For those who want to stay ahead, join our paid tier for just $10 a month and receive daily State of White Supremacy alerts Monday through Friday. Stay informed, stay empowered, and let's dismantle together.